Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Over the course of the next half hour, India Today's Shiv Arur in Tel Aviv and I will get you the latest on Israel's war on Hamas terror. This is day 26 of Israel's war on Hamas, and there is a shocking statement that's come from a senior Hamas political leader. Ghazi Hamad of the political bureau of the Hamas organization has been quoted as saying that not just one October 7, but to eradicate Israel, Hamas is willing and will carry out a number of October 7 like terror attacks. The aim of the Hamas organization is to ensure that Israel is completely removed from the face of this map. That is Hamas's main objective, and this has led to a furor. In fact, Britain's Foreign Secretary James Cleverly has also reacted. He's quote-tweeted this statement, a video statement of Ghazi Hamad of Hamas, saying, "How can there be peace when one side wants to completely eradicate the other?" Before I get you more on the story and we cut across to Shiv Arur in Tel Aviv for the latest, let's quickly get you what Ghazi Hamad of Hamas said.
Israel is a country that has no place on our land. We must remove that country because it constitutes a security, military and political catastrophe to the Arab and Islamic nations and must be finished. We are not ashamed to say this with full force. It is Israel, not us. We are the victims. Nobody should blame us for what happened on October 7th.
It is justified.
And the Israeli Defense Forces, they've expanded their operations in Gaza Strip. Israel says it's well aware of the mindset of Hamas, and that is why its operations are to completely eradicate Hamas from Gaza Strip, to ensure Hamas does not exist as a political entity or even as a terror threat or a military threat to the people of Israel. Israel's expanded operations in Gaza Strip included airstrikes, artillery strikes, and expanded ground operations. The Hamas launched an anti-tank guided missile attack on Israeli forces. 3 Israeli forces personnel were killed in action in the Gaza Strip, taking the total toll to 15 since ground operations started. 15 IDF soldiers have made the supreme sacrifice of their lives in these operations so far. The Hamas has claimed it will release some foreign hostages in the next few days. Hamas claims this is a gesture of goodwill. There is hectic back-channel negotiation that's underway. Reports seem to indicate that the Mossad chief and the former chief of Mossad had traveled to Qatar over the weekend. Negotiations continued. Israel is seeking the repatriation of all 240 plus hostages. Hamas has so far agreed to returning some foreign hostages, but not all 240 plus, unless Israel releases the 6,000 Palestinians in various Israeli prisons. However, Israel's operations, both from air and ground, continue. Israel also bombed a refugee camp in the Gaza Strip and claimed to have secured a major stronghold in the Gaza Strip for future operations and further operations. Very systematically, Israeli forces are moving forward. They've so far neutralized several strongholds of Hamas, killed several military leaders of Hamas in its operations. In fact, after the bombing, Israel has also claimed to have unearthed and destroyed a major tunnel of the Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and this was a major arterial tunnel, one of the crucial 1,300 in a network of tunnels known as the Gaza Metro. Almost 500 kilometers of maze of tunnels in the Gaza territory. Israel claims to have destroyed a very major part of that in northern Gaza Strip, amidst reports that food, fuel and medicine supply extremely low in the Gaza Strip. There are several aid workers and organizations that have said that Israel needs to increase the food, fuel, water and medicine supply to the Gaza Strip. Otherwise, the situation could be catastrophic. Israel has repeatedly said, release the hostages and there can be a conversation on food, fuel and medicines, but no fuel, because Israel's apprehension is the fuel is being used by Hamas to fuel all the rockets and missiles that target Israel. Let me get you more in this report.
Gaza remains under a thick layer of smoke as Israel continues counteroffensive. Over 8,000 Palestinians, including almost 3,000 children, have been killed in Israeli airstrikes. With the expansion of the ground operations, a multi-armed combined effort is taking place together with the Navy and the Air Force in order to neutralize ground attacks and significantly damage the terrorist organization Hamas. The Israeli military has released new videos showing lines of tanks, military canines and soldiers preparing to enter Gaza. Meanwhile, Hamas has released another footage showing its new homegrown Al-Asaf guided torpedo being fired at a number of Israeli targets. Another video shows fighting with Israeli troops in northern Gaza. Hamas has warned of more October 7-like attacks. Israel is a country that has no place on our land. We must remove that country because it constitutes a security, military and political catastrophe to the Arab and Islamic nations and must be finished. We are not ashamed to say this with full force. It is Israel, not us. We are the victims. Nobody should blame us for what happened on October 7th. The war on Hamas is set to escalate further as Israel expands ground operations. While Egypt has opened its borders for foreigners to leave Gaza, for Palestinians, no relief is in sight. Bureau Report, India Today.
Hello and welcome to another broadcast live from here on the Gaza front. I'm Shiv Arur. 2.5 kilometers from the northern end of the Gaza Strip, and it's been 5 days of non-stop airstrikes as well as a ground operation. The big question, however, is how is it really going and where is it headed? Aid may be trickling into the Gaza Strip, but the humanitarian crisis there is only expanding. There's a huge claim war over the actual death toll and damage inside Gaza, but reporting from here at the northern end, we've seen with our own eyes and my own camera the kind of hellscape that airstrikes have reduced parts of Gaza to, and that's only going to increase. How much of a humanitarian crisis is this turning out to be? Take a look at what we know.
The airstrikes lit up the night sky at Gaza with flashes. These are images of Israel-Hamas airstrikes targeting Jabalia Refugee camp on 31st October. Officials claimed more than 50 Palestinians had been killed and 150 wounded when tons of aerial explosives struck residential dwellings in the heart of the Jabalia camp in urbanized North Gaza.
A large number of injured have come to us after the large explosion that shook the entire Jabalia refugee camp. Hundreds of injuries, hundreds of martyrs. They were just in their homes. They were targeted while they were in their homes. Children, all martyrs. Women, elderly. We have no idea what to do. There are injured everywhere.
Jabalia is the largest of the Gaza Strip's 8 refugee camps, with around 116,000 registered Palestinians living there. It's in the northern portion of the Gaza enclave. The refugee camps here over decades have become dense, permanent communities with nowhere to rehabilitate the Palestinian refugees.
May God have mercy on them. To God we belong, and to Him we will return. May God give me patience. To God we belong, and to Him we will return. Intercede for us, God. God is great. Thank God we die as martyrs. May God give me patience.
This mother lost at least 3 of her children in the Israeli airstrikes of Tuesday. Israel justifies the airstrike as an important necessary move in the war to dismantle Hamas's underground operations.
Our forces continue to significantly expand their ground operations in the northern Gaza Strip. Overnight, forces engaged in significant battles, including a multi-story building in Jabalia area. Terrorists fired at our forces in the area. Hamas used that structure, like many others, as a sanctuary. In this case, talking about the deliberate use of civilian structure near a school, a medical center, and government offices.
The West Bank observed a general strike following Israeli airstrikes at Jabalia. In the neighboring country of Jordan, nearly 2,000 people protested in support of Palestinians in Gaza following the deadly airstrike on Jabalia.
I'm short of words after I saw this massacre. This is the first time I witnessed a massacre like the one I saw today. I have never seen something like this in my whole life. Not in the previous war, not the one before, not in any war. I collapsed.
Nothing changed since the destruction of Jabalia. The war continues, as neither side are ready to back down to consider the humanitarian cost of this war.
5 days of ground operations so far and no end in sight. The interesting thing is the intensity of the ground strikes are not increasing. They're staying static, suggesting that this is going to be, like the Israeli defense minister said, a long and hard battle inside the Gaza Strip.
Israel continues to advance further inside Gaza. The Israeli Defense Force has said that it has struck over 1,000 Hamas targets on the Gaza Strip since the ground invasion began. The aim of this operation is clear: the full decimation of Hamas. So the Israeli army is hunting for operational command centers and Hamas terrorist cells. Most of them, Israel claims, are located near schools, medical centers, and government offices.
The Gaza Strip isn't small, 41 kilometers long, 6 to 12 kilometers wide. There's a great deal of hiding places. There are tunnel networks. There are escape routes for the Hamas. But the leadership, remember, still sits abroad. But the fact that they're continuing to attack the IDF within Gaza and to attack Israel from outside, continues to be a major concern. When the ground operation will start having a visible effect on the Hamas's offensive capability remains to be seen.
This is an aerial view of Gaza City post-Israel's invasion began. Satellite images accessed by India Today show tracks of armored vehicles, large craters due to bombings, destroyed buildings, and IDF armored vehicles. But Hamas hellfire on Israel still continues. Fresh rockets were fired at Ashdod in central Israel's Ashdod. This theatre of war continues to expand. After Hezbollah from Lebanon, now Houthi rebels in Yemen have joined the fight with Hamas. Houthi rebels claimed responsibility for launching ballistic missiles and drones at Israel. Following the repeated firing from Yemen, Israel's Navy missile ships arrived in the Red Sea area. The Israel-Hamas war now turning into a larger West Asia conflict. With Shivarur at Gaza border, Bureau Report, India Today.
After 25 days, the hostage crisis is nowhere close to being resolved. One young corporal, a lady soldier of the IDF, was rescued by special forces from inside the Gaza Strip, but over 220 hostages remain inside an area 41 kilometers by 12 kilometers. some of them even possibly in the northern end of the Gaza Strip that I am reporting near from. Take a look at what we know so far and the very latest on a crisis that has spiraled out of control.
Israel continued with its offensive. Its forces attacked Hamas gunmen inside the Islamists' vast tunnel network beneath Gaza. The tunnels are a key objective for Israel as it expands ground operations inside Gaza to wipe out the ruling Hamas movement.
There have been 300 airstrikes since last night, and we're told that more airstrikes are going to happen. We're being buzzed. Urban conglomeration city is, of course, Gaza City, and that's where much of the bombing is taking place right now. Viable anti-tank and anti-armored vehicle positions continue to remain in that particular area, and that's one of the reasons why the momentum of the ground operation remains far lower than it usually is.
Gazans are using donkey-drawn carts to move shrouded bodies, casualties of Israel's ground invasion on the Strip. Doctors are now performing surgeries in the hallway after hospitals were damaged in the shelling. Israel, on the other hand, celebrated the release secured by its security forces of one Hamas captive, Private Ori Megiddish.
Last night, our forces freed Private Ori from Hamas captivity. Ori was kidnapped on the black morning of October 7th. Welcome home, Ori. I congratulate the Shin Bet and the Israeli army for this important achievement. An achievement that expresses our commitment to the release of all the abductees. The entire nation of Israel salutes the Shin Bet and Israeli army, and to the terrorists of Hamas and ISIS, I say, you are monsters. We will continue to pursue you. We will continue to hunt you down. We will cripple you until you fall on our feet.
Though Israel did not reveal details on the circumstances of Private Ori's release, it said she had since undergone medical checks and was doing well.
Over 220 hostages continue to be in captivity with the Hamas in this part of this geography. The Gaza Strip is a large place. It's a big place to hide 220 hostages. Remember, the Hamas has been talking about how the airstrikes may have killed tens of these hostages already, but this may be psychological warfare. There is no proof of this yet. There's no evidence of this yet.
On the other hand, Hamas released a video on Monday that showed 3 hostages seized by the Islamist movement addressing an angry message to the Prime Minister Netanyahu. Prime Minister Netanyahu condemned the video and called it cruel psychological propaganda. In his statement, he said, "We are hugging the families. We will do everything to return all the kidnapped and missing people home." He also named hostages as Elena Trupanov, Daniel Aloni and Ramon Kirst and said, "I hug you." Only one of the hostages addressed the camera throughout the clip. Gaza health authorities claim that more than 8,000 people, including 3,457 minors, have been killed in Israeli attacks since October 7th. UN officials say more than 1.4 million of Gaza's civilian population of about 2.3 million have been made homeless. The war that started following Hamas' gun rampage 3 weeks ago has taken the ugly look of human catastrophe. Despite repeated appeals from the international community, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu dismissed calls for a halt to fighting to ease the Palestinian enclave's humanitarian crisis.
I've been reporting from Israel and Palestine for the last 2 weeks. As I depart today from Israel, I wanted to leave you with some thoughts, viewer. Thoughts I didn't have the time to have while I've been reporting on this gruesome conflict and its latest cycle. It is possible to condemn Hamas terror while acknowledging the plight of the Palestinian people. It is possible to condemn Hamas using human shields while also condemning Israel's use of force in civilian areas of Gaza. It is possible to question and condemn collateral damage in Gaza while also seeking evidence of the death toll being announced by a Hamas-controlled health ministry. It is possible to show solidarity with Israel and still question specific claims of atrocities. It is possible to condemn a Hamas speech in India while upholding India's policy of support to Palestinians. It is possible to see Hamas as a terrorist group without diluting your worldview on Muslims. It is possible to see Israel as an aggressor while still acknowledging that innocent Israelis were murdered by Hamas. It is possible to acknowledge suffering in Gaza while condemning Hamas tunnels built under civilian areas. It is possible to feel pain for Israelis and Palestinians without seeing the crisis as a sounding board for your own preconceived biases and notions. It is possible to feel strongly about the allegations on both sides while accepting that you don't know enough. It is possible to be traumatized by what you see while accepting that you should go deeper into the history of how things came to this terrible pass. The people of Israel and Palestine deserve better.